So I have a joke I think right now.
Sure, are you sure? You're anything, you're and everything?
What follows 2 days of stormy weather in Michigan? Monday.
That's good. That's good.
That's your joke.
It's the bell rings, the last toll isn't done yet. Bruce, thank you for showing up. Ryan was starting to tell
Lost track of
jokes.
time.
Ryan was starting to tell jokes and it's not good.
Professional.
It's really good.
It's really busy now.
It is 2 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order, the Finance Committee meeting, June 25th. We have a couple additions to the agenda. First is under 2A, I would like to put a short administrator's report. Or you can take it as long as you need, Ryan. And then also under 4, let's add D, what was in your yellow folder, the tire grant opportunity, and Kate can handle that right when she's here, so we'll add that. Is there any other additions to the agenda?
Move for approval as amended.
Support. Okay, you have a motion by Dave, support by Ann. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. We'll go on to Lebanon public comment. Anyone? Now's your chance. Hearing none, we're going to move on then. Item 2A is Ryan's got a report, and commissioners had a part of the report is in your packet, and a couple of things that I know Ryan wants to touch on is the communications tower, and then also the power outage that we had and how that worked.
Okay, well, thank you. Kind of a typical report, just some, certainly isn't meant to be all inclusive of issues, but particularly I thought it was interesting to note the 911 outage of June 17th. So it was last Thursday, I believe, I remember date. Earlier this year, the county board supported the acquisition of the Code Red and the IPAWS. If you recall, the IPAWS stands for the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. Apparently, there was some Consumers Power was doing some work in the DeWitt area, was setting a new pole, cut fiber lines, lost 911 service to a big segment of the southern end of the county. The exchanges that were lost with DeWitt, Bath, Lanesburg, etc. It was nice to know that the IPAWS system worked as we had hoped it would. There was almost immediate sprawls out on the news media. Social media was very active. The Code Red, the contacts were calling. I mean, word got around pretty quickly that if there was an emergency, that you might want to take a different route. You have those instructions while there on those messages. So it worked well. Things are going to continue to happen like that, unfortunately, but it was good to know that investment worked for us the way it was expected to. Otherwise, the other thing that I wanted to note was a little bit of additional information on the Southeast Tower. Could go on and on and on about that, but in a nutshell, we have, the building committee has met a couple of occasions. An alternate location has been selected. We have some support from the landowner there, the Vales, to place that. I guess primarily I wanted to show you the location. Oh, excuse me. I'll turn this around. You guys want to see it in a minute. Just so we get a look at it. This here is the Vale property, extends over here to, I believe they have 160 acres here. This is an 80. Depicted here, but on the opposite side of this. The original site was down here, this vicinity here, just off the road, kind of tucked in here. That was the site plan that went to the planning commission, was based on that. There was quite a groundswell of opposition to that location. We then thought, well, that we wanted to move it away. That was a desire. I believe it was right in this vicinity here somewhere. We moved it several hundred feet to the north. Still, that wasn't a very good spot. It didn't have a lot of buy-in or support there. We worked with the Vales. There's some issues here with the use of the rail right-of-way, and our attorney was involved quite extensively in this. And ultimately, we're coming off of Upton Road here, going to come up the rail grade, and this right here would be the site. This first one is depicted here. Surveys are being conducted now, so we can get a new site plan together. Once the survey work's done, there'll be a new easement document put together by the attorney, and some of the terms of that will be discussed at a later date. There's some nuances to this, but effectively, I didn't measure this exactly, but just for the record, while we're here. The scale on this is 1 inch equals 100 feet. So from this approximate location here, please don't hold me to this, but it's a substantial move. We're about 12.5 inches in the center there. So it's a significant move from where it was. It might be 100 feet out one way or another. But, there was some pushback here because there was some view to this area, but we agreed to put some trees in and mitigate it. There's a wet area here, some additional fill, and use more farmland, and yada, yada, yada. The Vales are receptive to having a place to run their farm, so that's the path we're running down right at the moment. Seems to be in pretty good shape. Probably July, August, it's my time for the planning commission. But the other regulatory permits are going to take considerably longer anyway, so I don't know that in the grand scheme of things, be triggered, the planning commission is in control when we can actually move forward with the project. So, I want to be sure to share that. I'll turn this way, I guess. Oh, can't beat this thing for whatever reason. Oh man. Sign it a moment here. This is where the original, roughly, and it's this is the new site here. It's proposed. So. But anyway, that was my report.
Any questions for Ryan? Comments? Anyone?
That was an interesting endeavor.
Yeah.
I gobbled up a lot of time. Yes.
A lot of the Vales accommodated the objections and stuff. Went along with some things here, and thank them. They were willing to work with us on that because it's really hard to give something away and then have objections to it.
And especially with your neighbors. Right next door, so very good. Thank you, Ryan. We are going to move on then to our 2014 audit. And if you'd like to come up and Jerry, go ahead and I think we'll go through the audit first, your presentation, and then our second item of business is to look at an extension to the contract for the audit. The floor is yours.
I believe you had electronic copies of this, so you have copies in front of you as well.
Yes.
Brought those today, so what I'd like to do is spend about 3 hours and go through this.
You like talking to walls?
You go right ahead.
I think we need to move him to the end.
Slide on out of here.
Some people think it's fun. Okay, we'll cut it down a little bit. On page 1, which is right after the index, just show you where the opinion is. This is our opinion on the financial statements. It's going 2 pages long now. It's a standard opinion that any CPA would issue. The only difference is there is a paragraph in here saying we did not audit the County Road Commission. It was audited by someone else, so we have to disclose that. So other than that, it's a standard unmodified audit opinion, which means there's no modification for exceptions. So it's the cleanest, highest level of assurance that we can give you. will be accepted by the state and the federal government. And then just a quick look at the general fund on page 18. That first column on the left, general fund, is just the general fund of the county. And this is for the year ended December 31st. So you have $20 million in investments. Some other assets, receivables, total assets, $22.2 million as of that date. Liabilities are $5.8 million. Deferred property taxes, $600,000. And the end of the year with fund balance. And that's basically your equity, your net worth at the end of the year. In total, it's $15,759,000, so $15.7 million. The non-spendable portion represents the advanced other funds in the component unit, so you left that money out so you can't spend it. But committed is your designations or commitment to various funds. The largest of those are signification of $1.1 million and debt retirement of 4.5. So you set that money aside for those purposes. So that left $9 million, which is about 40% reserve compared to your total expenditures and transfers out. So that's a very healthy fund balance to have. So you're in a good financial position at that point in time.
Hey, Jerry, can I stop you there for just a second? I think it's probably important to note that, we paid off the courthouse debt this spring, and that $4 or $5 million that you mentioned, and that reserve is going to be reduced by almost $4 million because of that.
Yeah, something, first of the year, right?
So it looks like there's a lot of money there, that it's there for a reason, and we're using it as the board intended.
So that's the balance sheet. And on page 22 is basically your income statement, your revenues and expenditures. And again, it's just a general fund. It shows the original budget, final budget, the actual. That represents the 12 months activity. So you had total revenues of $22,946,000, which is pretty close to what you anticipated. It was $248,000 more than you had budgeted. Expenditures came in at $16,990 or $17 million. You had budgeted 17.8, so you underspent compared to what you thought you would by $850,000. Then you had your transfers in and transfer out. I believe most of that money went to the public improvement fund. So that left you with $1.1 million excess of revenues over expenditures. So you thought you were going to break even. You had another surplus of $1 million, let's call it, which brought you to the $15,759,000 you saw on the balance sheet.
Yeah, I was just mentioning there too as well, we drew that down by $1 million, and we put money towards the pensions after that last contract as well.
So a very good year for the general fund. Looking at page 25, this is another major fund. Here's one from the tax fund. Just so you know, this is in here. This represents your tax collection for the local units. You can see the cash is $2.8 million. The presence is $6.8. You have your taxes receivable. And what's left is, again, your net position or net worth. It's almost $12 million. You're not borrowing money. You're self-funded to pay off the units, which is another great position to be in that year. How did that fund do for the year on the next page, page 26? For those that didn't pay the tax on time, they paid the interest of $478,000. They had some minor expenses. They had a profit of $452,000. Investment income of $156,000. So the fund itself had a profit of $600,000. Transferred out $2.4 million, and I believe that was to the retirement fund.
Yeah, over $2 million of it was the retirement fund, yeah.
And then some other non-major funds as well.
So that was like pay down points.
So basically stayed in the county and just went to other funds.
Gary, you mentioned the position of not having to do tax anticipation. So how many, you have a estimate of how many people have to do that if you're dealing with tax?
Borrow money?
Yes. There's quite a few.
Yeah, most of them are still borrowing money, and they just basically have relied on the fund to support the general fund, so that they don't leave the money in there. They have to borrow
Right.
from saving all those claims, if I'm not wrong.
We're doing very well.
We take some hits about the money that's there, but we avoid that cost of that significant financial transaction to make that happen, so that's a very noteworthy issue.
Plus, we're making very good money.
Right.
Yeah.
Most big fees. The interest are much lower.
Which is coming.
Yeah, right, correct. Which we've used that kind of to shift over to either, our legacy costs or capital.
It's a win-win.
So we look at the general fund, delinquent tax, and normally what we look at now is the retirement funds on page 29. This is your postal fund, trust fund that's sitting here showing total assets of $10,867,000. Most of that's invested on, so that's money that you set aside to pay for retirees' health care benefits. So how did those investments do on page 30? Shows you the contributions that were put into the system by the county and by the employees. And it shows your increase in fair market value, $502,000. Benefits are paid out of there. So the fund went up by $785,000 per year. So that's looking at other counties, do other counties fund that? You're one of the few that do, so you're very fortunate to be in that position. So when we go to page 76 and 77, we'll start at 77 first. There's an actuarial evaluation that's done on that healthcare trust. So these numbers represent the actuarial evaluation numbers. So at the end of, they're a year behind, at the end of 2013, there was $10 million that we saw on the balance sheet a while ago. Your actuarial liability, that's what you will be paid into the future of 8.7. So we were overfunded by 1.3 million, or we were funded 160%, which is, I think, the first time I've seen this. So that's good. That, obviously, this is a date time, and that can change significantly by what the market does or doesn't do. How did you get there? Well, if you look down below, the required contribution was $280,000. We've been putting some extra money in there. You can see how much you contributed over and above the amount required. So last year, you put in 203%, so you put in an extra $568,000. So that's how you got to be fully funded for retirement health care. Yeah,
We've talked about it pretty extensively. I think they're pretty familiar with that.
and then on page 76 on the left, there's your MERS retirement system. How do you stand there? Again, you're looking at that, you're 84% funded. Again, this is a year ago, December 31st, 13. If you look at how you're contributing, again, you're paying more than what the actuary is saying to pay. So in 2014, you paid more than 38% of what you told you to pay. So you paid almost an extra $6 million. Right? And that was paid out of the health trust, health internal service fund.
Well, right, it was a combination of delinquent tax and retirement. But if you look at Ryan's report, we did receive our actuarial for 2014, and we are now 94%, which is exactly where we thought we would be.
I know we've talked about this, but I think it's worth saying again. The operating budget's going forward, the percent of payroll for pension, for OPEB liabilities, those have been reduced dramatically. They're going to help us float the boat for the next several years ahead. So we've reduced our operating expenses by following this money there. I know we've talked about it, but wanted to sure to repeat that just for the record. And it's going to be a huge difference.
Well, most counties are struggling how to fund their pension, let alone their health care. You know, one county, Saginaw County, issues $60 million in bonds to fund their pension. And that raises some eyebrows. Why do you want to fund the liability by issuing bonds? now they're thinking about doing the same thing. So when you're not in that position, you don't have to worry about all that stuff.
It just pushes the problem over into another area and just pushes it down the road even further.
Well, the real risk in that is if they do that, they're taking that bond money and putting it into their pension fund, which if all of a sudden we're at a 5% return on that, they're in deeper, than they were the
The
other way.
interest rate on bond is 6%. Any questions on the rest of the audit before I jump into something else? There's not when you have all good news, so.
That's all. And you know, one thing I want to say too is, we've discussed this, Jerry, we've discussed it many times, our pension obligations and our OPEB liability and everything else. And I know this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways, is that Saginaw County did what they had to do. Other counties have done what they had to do. Other municipalities will do what they have to do. It's not that I don't care about that, I care about Clinton County. What's going on here? We, past commissioners have done what's right, the administration has advised what's right. I shouldn't say right, but it was taken care of at the time correctly. And now we don't have to face a lot of problems that people are going to have to face in the future, in the very near future now, when it becomes glaringly in your face, this is what some of these liabilities are. And probably everyone feels the same way. I think some people are going to be shocked when they see some of these numbers next year on their audit. And I can just imagine the press getting a hold of some of these numbers in some of these places and saying, what in the world's going on here? Now that it's right in your face. So we just don't have to worry about that. We can go forward, and it's really, really good for Clinton County.
Okay, just two other quick points. You also got what's called a single audit report, another separate document. That's required by the federal government. Because they were nice enough to give you $932,000. You're required to have a single audit, which means we're doing the audit with all these agencies that are going to come in and do themselves. So we're doing one audit, and hopefully they won't come in and do separate audits. So we did that. We looked at your internal controls at the financial statement level and at the federal level, looked at your compliance with the regulations at the federal level. There's two opinions in here. I won't spend time reading because again, they're standard opinions. There are no except no finding and no question costs. And it says that in here. Again, that's the best you can do. Your kind of report card is on page 10. Kind of reverse psychology here. You want all no answers, so you got all no answers. And you got two unmodified opinions. So the questions are whether the material weaknesses no. So we have to positively affirm that we did not find anything in our audit process. So again, that's exactly what you want. No problems, no recommendations, same auditor. And then finally, there's a separate letter that was given to the board. It explains the audit process, some of the assumptions that were made. Significant accounting estimates, which obviously one of those are actual evaluations. Explains any material adjustments that we had, which we did not have any. And then if there were other matters, other recommendations that we thought needed to be in writing, we would put them here. There were none of those. There were some issues that we talked about and resolved, and nothing material that was needed to be put in. Other than that, great job. Staff amendments provided everything we needed. We're a little later this year than normal, but there's some other reasons for that.
Any questions on anything? Craig or Ryan, do you have any comments on anything?
Just that the fact that our books are so clean is all good as any.
Excellent.
That is, and I
It
guess
is, yeah.
this goes back a little more into what you were saying before. You know, staff in the organization has been very helpful in making these things happen this way. And that goes from the accounting to all departments, getting the job done, getting it done right, and recognizing that we are a constituent service organization, keeping that part very high right here. So it's kudos to the staff all the way through.
Really is, absolutely. If there is no questions, then I would entertain a motion to accept the audit and the expenditures of federal awards.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, supports. Motion, we have support. Any other question, discussion at all? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. And our second piece of business is to look at doing the audit next year. Just so everyone knows, Gary's not going to be doing it, more than likely, because he's retired. So, but you have had someone here working with you, somebody knows them, everything has worked good. And the recommendation on the back of that sheet is for the 3 years going forward at 27.9, 28.7, and 29.500. And Ryan, do you want to
Yeah, I would just,
speak to that?
no, there's just a, there's a bit of a bump that first year. I trust a significant amount of that is attributed to the additional scrutiny within the GATSB 68 rules. Defer to Cindy a great deal on that, but we've talked about that, we've worked towards this, setting things up so that reporting can be done properly. The audit's a big deal. I mean, it's very time consuming, even when you have clean records and such. We get through this next phase particularly, would be management's preference to stay with Randy to just get through these next couple of hops. This really isn't a contract, it's a proposal. I mean, this is a sensitive area in many organizations of what goes on with the audits and, the transparency of all of that. But since they were going to be here, I put it on here today if there's any questions. I mean, it's a practical matter, the lead auditor, Mr. Dusluber is not here every day throughout that process. They have field staff that come and spend hours and hours, I don't know, a couple of weeks worth anyways.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
And that staff is rotated. It has, I don't know if it was intentionally, but there has been some transitions with those folks. If there's ever that concern from anyone on the board, collusion, just maybe feel warm and fuzzy, as we've noted, they are a large organization. Other auditors were able to come in at any time. Mr. Robbins, I think, was another kind of lead auditor who was intended to probably take your spot, but he took another position along the way. He spent quite a bit of time in some oversight role. Doug Dieter, he spent quite a bit of time here this year, and he will be taking Jerry's slot come next year. And I guess I just want to be certain we have this conversation now rather than something creep up some other day. Why have we met with these folks all this time? But just be upfront about it. It's a two-way street. It takes a heck of a lot of time and energy out of this office, county office especially, to get through this process. Sometimes you can change courses and just create one heck of a lot of work from not really get any further. We just have the familiarity with our folks and our systems. At least there's some carryover of staff that can help, I think, move that along for us. That's all we have to say.
Any question I can help with?
No, I mean, they've been involved, some of these people, the individuals that would be picking up here have been involved in the process this year. You're saying that?
Yes, yeah.
So they're familiar with it. I guess as long as it involves a few different people, I think that's a broader perspective and it's kind of a self-checking thing in itself. I guess I'm comfortable with that one.
And so you're for this?
I am,
You work well with them?
I
Work
do.
well with you?
yes.
I mean, we have to be blunt on the table here about it, and as we want to hear it, there's not a problem there either.
No, it's gone very, very well. I'm able to contact them and get my questions answered. They've assisted with, especially with questions that we might have on the Gatsby 68. They've been there as much as as I've needed them, and I've helped them out with all the information that they need, so we do have a good rapport.
I mean, throughout the year, though, there'd be an instance come up where we can call someone from their office and get some direction. It's nice to have a bit of a professional relationship with a firm in that scope that provide some guidance on a day-to-day basis, not day-to-day, but on an occasional basis anyway, for some of the more unique situations that you encounter along the path. Yes.
That's an important relationship to have, because at the end of the day, it makes the audit process much easier. If you can check back in the meantime, you kind of know which way are we going, should we go with this?
Yep, yep.
Just a couple questions, advertising, if I could. Raymond is a large firm with 1,000 employees, audited the states, and we audit probably the most counties in Michigan. We audit like 24, including Wayne County, Washington, and so we audit a lot of different counties, a lot of smaller counties too. So we bring that expertise to the table with respect to county government.
Jerry, I have a question, not directly related to this, but in a way, in just your sense, the Gatsby 68 is like kind of a big thing in auditing. Do you see anything else like that coming, or is this going to sort of put this thing to bed in your, and this is, I'm just asking for your opinion. That's why I was afraid you're going to say, I'm out of here, I can't deal with it anymore, but.
Truthfully, what they're going to do is 68 applies to pensions. They're going to do the same thing. Roll it up.
Exactly.
And that's why you're in a great position, that you have covered everything. But basically, next year, you have to report the liability on your end-of-line statement for pensions. The actual unfunded liability, and then down the road, that would be the same for all. So that's the next big thing. After that, I don't see.
As far as the way we account for OPEB, that's really going to be pretty much a breeze. I'm not saying a breeze, not a breeze, but it's going to be along the same line, and we're already.
Right, the biggest thing will be disclosures, more
Yes.
footnotes. We'll actually give an asset on the balance sheet with a liability.
Wonderful. Dave?
Yes, just one distinction here as we look forward to this. Made the comments, that we've had it for a while. And I still believe, I'm familiar with the company, and they're professional, above board place. And sometimes, you can go ahead and have a long-term relationship with somebody, and, you kind of turn a blind eye, because it's a friendly relationship type of thing. I don't believe that this is the case. I believe, that this firm's been hired to go ahead and do a job. And yes, there's a relationship, with the staff, some of the people and everything like that. But I think that, both our staff and the accounting firms and stuff like that coming in, business to business, it comes time to go ahead and do that. So, just want to make sure that people understand, that if we go forward and do this, it's not because, hey, we're friends, type of thing, and we're just doing it because we've always done it. We're doing it because they do a professional job and get what we're paid for.
Very good. Anyone else?
Yeah, well, thank you. I wanted to be sure we had a chance to get this out here, and it wasn't anything to sneak up on us.
We're looking at two options.
Well, we're looking at the two options. Probably, I don't want to put words in his mouth. If someone wants to make a motion to approve the proposal, this is not the contract, as Ryan said, but at least a proposal that this is the direction that we want to go, that is the type of motion we'd be looking for.
Well, the two options there, the first one offering a 3-year extension with an additional 2-year option. And then the fees are listed out.
And we can go with either just the 3 years or the 3 with the additional 2. I see no reason to not go with the 3 and then decide later on if we want to continue or whatever. 3 years gives us a long window to look at.
It doesn't, I mean, the reality is the year to year deal. We can't
Sure,
sure,
yes.
for November of any year anyways, but
If we wanted to.
whatever your preference.
Yeah, I guess I look at it 3 years. that's a safe window to work on, and I guess within a year or two, if we choose to extend it another 2 years, we can do that at one time. And I guess projecting out there 5 years, kind of a long window, and it's only 2 to look through. So
Did you have a motion?
I will make the motion for the 3 years.
Any supports? Motion. Any other discussion at all, anyone? And again, this is, we're voting on a proposal to move this forward. This is not the actual contract at all, but the proposal that this is the way we will move the extension of audit services with Raymond. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on then from audits to waste management.
Hi.
Probably a few audits go thrown in the trash, I don't know. That's where they all end up sooner or later, so
Right.
it's such good reading.
Yeah, so I have a few things to go over today.
Okay, you go right ahead.
First thing I'm just gonna mention is our annual report for our 2, well, last year was 3 rural recycling sites. It just needs to be reviewed and put on file. We do have our annual meeting this afternoon at 5:30 at the health department for anyone that's interested in popping in. I'll go over the report page by page and answer any questions that any of my public has. I usually have 2 to 4 people show up for that annual meeting. I keep in really good touch with my municipalities through email. So they've already received this through the regular mail and through email. So they've got plenty of opportunity to review it. It was at the end of May I sent it out. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the drop-off sites or the program itself.
Okay, I have one little very insignificant question, really. On page 4, I really did look through this. I really did look through it. And under status of recycled commodity market values and so on, it says in late 2008. You're going back to that time frame?
Yeah, because it was such
That
a
was one that,
significant drop
Okay.
in value when the bubble burst.
all right.
So yeah, I felt like this was the last year I could reference that, as I felt like up until last year, we were really still trying to make a recovery on that, and then again this fall, or last fall, it dropped again when all the gas prices dropped, the commodity values dropped as well. So it wasn't as severe as in 2008, but
Still going down.
it is, yeah, it's just, they're really low again, but they're not like drastically low as they were in 08.
Is,
That's when it kind of prompted local participation back in 2008. I think that's about when we started that.
We started this in, actually, it's longer than that. Yeah, in 2008, this may have been when we, around the time we increased it to $15 per household. Yeah, because it was 10 we started. Yeah.
any other questions?
Just the Westphalia thing is, they are looking to go forward with, was it once a month?
They have started
They
it.
started that.
Mhm. So the Village of Westphalia and Westphalia Township was another one of our sites through May of 2014 when we had it hosted, it was hosted at the high school. The high school was going through some budget issues and changing in staff, and they were doing some remodeling of the structure that our site was sitting near. And so they asked us to remove it from that site. It was at that point where they said we also don't want it to ever come back to the school because it takes too much to maintain. And so the village and the township have worked together to do their own program that mirrors what the village of Elsie does. The village of Elsie works collaboratively with 2 other townships as well to provide a once-a-month collection. It's the first full weekend of each month. It's held at the right at the village hall in Westphalia, and so they've done it twice now, and so far it's plugged along. We've helped with marketing on that and just getting the word out that they're no longer part of our rural recycling program, but there's still a recycling opportunity for residents. promoting that as much as they can in hopes that other municipalities look into doing a collaborative effort similar to it. Eagle. Township.
Okay.
We're not pointing fingers, but, yeah. So,
The Eagle thing, I must admit, it's sure not for lack of effort on the part of Pat.
Yeah.
She chased down, I think, every property owner in the township trying to get them cornered on hosting a recycling center, but it's not been successful.
I'm still in regular contact with her as well, so. See you later.
Good. There's no action required on this, other than I would entertain a motion to receive and place on file the report. Bruce supports, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. And then moving on to the 4B, which is the Citizens Advisory Committee. And I did talk to Bob about this before our meeting today. Obviously, he's not here, but he would like us, Kate, to sit down, maybe Ann, because Ann is on, and you and Bob and either Adam or myself, and probably Ryan, and discuss if we would like to go this route. And it would be to set up an ad hoc committee to review three basic different things that I believe came out of your solid waste committee.
Right.
And that is the landfill user fees, which were established back in '82. 89. Yep. How best to expand recycling services within our county and how to provide better access to recycling. And he would just like to have a discussion about that before we would move on that.
Sure.
So there's no action required or anything, and I talked to Ian about it. Ian represents us on
Yeah, on the solid waste management plan.
and we kind of see where it's coming from, what the impetus is behind it. There's probably some things that need to be addressed. I know I, for one, have always questioned the recycling because of coming from LC and how we've always funded our own, and Hope has always funded their own. I know life's not fair, but this really isn't fair and inequitable. So maybe in the future we will meet as an ad hoc committee and decide how we want to proceed.
Yeah, that can look at the cost townships provide most of this areas now. That's a piece of what they're contributing to the integration. Yeah, I guess I've been talking about this for a while. We need to look at somehow kind of coordinate and synchronize countywide. If we could do a little better at it, it puts us in a better position with volumes sometimes to get better prices on some things too.
We've talked about it ever since I've been here, Dave. It's kind of like we never really get to that next step. So maybe we do that with this. Okay.
I did get approached from the region,
Yes.
and just they did a statewide, or region.
It's a
More of a region.
regional, right. So I've been working regionally with a whole host of municipalities in the Tri-County area to do a feasibility study. And that started back in October of 2013. It seems like it's been a really long time. Yeah, it was October of 2013. Just to see to get an idea of how well we're doing versus what we can be doing as a region. And if our volumes would support a bigger and better sorting facility or transfer station for recycling. Because right now, there's how many different haulers shipping it all over the state. Is there a value to creating some kind of consortium or private-public partnership to keep that material within the Tri-County area? So we've been working with, we started out with using grad students to collect data, and then we hired a contractor, it's called Resource Recycling Systems, to crunch the numbers and give us a presentation, which they did back in May. And then, so now we're at a point where that contractor is contacting public and private partners to see if there's any interest in moving forward as a big collaborative effort. And then funding is the biggest point. Like, how are we going to fund something like this? So in an effort to move that forward, we've decided to put together a committee to kind of help us address certain issues and just get the word out that this is still looking at.
Okay, so we're going to leave 4B just at that, there's no action needed. We're going to look at, just sit down and sort of look for a direction that we'll be coming back here. And 4C is the cleaning community event schedule.
Right, so along with changes in commodity values last fall, there was a big change in CRTs, which is captured to units, which is mostly TVs and computer monitors, the older style ones. Our vendor contacted us at the beginning of the year and said we can no longer honor our current contract to pay 2.5 cents a pound for everything. We're going to be able to pay 2.5 cents a pound for certain items, but then we have to charge you up to 35 cents per pound for the CRTs. So we're like, okay, well, it happened just after the first of the year. I was like, let's just see how the spring event goes. I don't want to throw out there that we need to start charging right away. I kind of want to get a bill in, because then, we can say, well, this is what it cost us to do this event, and we have some justification to change our fee schedule, because up to this point, we've been taking electronics for free for a number of years. And we had started to see this kind of trickle down last year when some of our collection sites that go year-round stopped taking CRTs. They were what we call cherry picking, and that was becoming more and more prevalent as 2014 came to a close, and we're like, they're all going to end up at our spring event. And sure enough, they did, and we got slammed with a $3,800 bill to cover the cost to recycle the electronics at our event. So with that in mind, I contacted our vendor and said, what is your suggested rate per CRT in order to make this flush? We're not paying out, but we're not making money on it. He said the average is about $9 per unit. And I was like, that seems a lot to me for residents that had not had to pay for an item to recycle it. So we talked among staff and just among other organizations that are doing collections similar to ours, various counties. We felt that $5 per unit wasn't astronomical, and that it may discourage people, but at the same time, we have to cover our costs, because that was a huge expense that we had not planned for in our budget. So that's just a lot of information all at once for you guys. So we've come to the conclusion that we need to charge something, and then we'll just see how it goes. Our fall event is generally smaller, but electronics is we'll probably end up getting about 75% of the volume that we got in the spring. It's still a pretty heavy commodity that comes in. So I don't know if there's any thoughts, comments, editorials on that. We just need to get your blessing to change our fee schedule before we move forward with that.
Now, I'm sorry, anyone, go ahead. Questions? Yes. Yeah.
So is this proposed fee schedule?
Yes.
Is that the only change?
For this part, yeah, and then something happened last week on top of it for the tires. And then
We're going to address
yeah,
that.
we'll
separately.
address that separately, yeah.
So the option for individuals who make a choice that they won't recycle because it costs them $5 could in theory just go throw it in their trash can and then it goes in the landfill.
Right.
Okay.
They could do that with anything
Right now.
that we take care of.
Yeah.
It's just their choice, what they
Yeah.
want to do,
Okay.
which way they want to go.
Okay. All right. Thank you. $5 is reasonable.
Yes, reusable.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the first charge, you say most electronics, televisions and computers are out, what are you referring to?
Other electronics that we
Yeah.
see, like the computer tower, keyboards, mice, printer scanners, any audio or visual equipment stuff, like camcorders, VCRs, DVD players, speakers, subwoofers, satellite dishes, I could go on and on about all the stuff that comes in. Anything that is electronic with a cord or cords themselves, Christmas lights, we see all that stuff come in. You would be surprised. Yeah, there's a lot of electronic stuff out there.
I'm surprised, working at that, what people dispose of. I usually end up down by the oil,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm flabbergasted of
All the stuff that drives by.
all the brand new oil containers that come in that people throw away, brand new oil that's still sealed
Yeah,
containers.
they just don't know what to do with it, they don't want to mess with it.
And kudos, you know, that they don't just dump it out, someplace.
Right. And we don't charge for oil.
Yeah.
That's one of the free things.
I don't want to cut off discussion, but I'd entertain a motion if someone is so so inclined to move that we adopt a new event fee schedule.
Support.
Bruce, Dave supports. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. Then we'll move on to the one that was in your yellow folder on sort of the same thing,
Right, so
but
this
a
came
little
out
different
of
twist to it.
just a very like casual roundtable discussion. We were at a household hazardous waste roundtable. We meet quarterly to talk about who's doing what stuff. And it was just, I was sharing information about our program and I mentioned that we weren't going to do a tire collection at our fall event because we really struggle with getting tires to come in. And we have to pay for that tire trailer to show up whether there's tires on it or not. So we're losing money. We lose money on the tire collection anyway, but we're like losing a lot of money like blatantly at the fall events. And Eaton County Resource Recovery, my counterpart in Eaton County, she said that she has applied for a tire grant through the DEQ the last year or two and has been very successful in her county. And she suggested that we collaborate for our fall event. She actually ended up having a little bit of a surplus because she didn't collect as many tires at her events as she was expecting to. So she had enough money to cover one tire trailer and that she needed to use up by the end of August. And I was like, really? So out of that discussion, we came up with a plan. She's already gotten approval from her higher-ups to work collaboratively on it. So as far as what that will cost our county if we don't fill the tire trailer, it's hard for me to say. Worst case scenario, we get 0 tires that come in because for whatever reason, we would be stuck with the $1,200 bill, which isn't far off of what we would have to pay for the tire trailer to be dropped anyway. We need to put 600 tires on that trailer for it to be a 0 cost for us. If we're offering a free event, free tire event, I'm confident that we can get very close to that, if not more. Like, I'm sure we could fill it if we promote it enough. That's why I wanted to bring it to you right away so I can start getting promotion out on it. So the DEQ's requirements, Eaton County will be the fiduciary, so everything's done through them. They're the holder of the grant. We're just the receiver of the goods. I would have to add DEQ's logo onto our flyer and mention it in press releases to make sure that they get the credit for providing the service for the grants. And then Eaton County and I have been talking about possibly applying for the tire grant together next year so that we can provide this again next year for our residents. It'd be collaborative effort. So just a thought.
It's it, you mentioned passenger car tires.
Yes.
Truck tires and
Tractor tires are allowed too, yes. The vendor that we're using in the fall is different than the one that we have been using from previous years, who just told us that they can no longer take anything over a certain size.
Right.
This vendor, First Class Tire out of Clio, can take any size, and then you get credited, I think it's 5 passenger car tires for a semi tire and 15 for a tractor tire. That's the equivalent, that's DEQ math. So you can either put 600 passenger car tires on there, or if you put in, I don't know, 30, 40, or, yeah, like of the big tires on there, it counts for more car tires. And so, like I said, I'm pretty confident we can at least match the $600 for 600 tires.
The motion of it out there, though, got to make it clear, because the last time it was stated, no tractor tires.
Yes.
This time it should be made clear, because I'm sure there's a few out there.
We didn't come in the spring, yeah. People weren't upset about that, though. We had maybe 1 or 2 complaints out of the whole 460 people that came. So, that's a good thing.
Kate, does this require much of a involved contract with them at all, or is that not really a big concern right now?
I haven't seen any of the paperwork, but I trust it's pretty small.
Pretty straightforward.
Credit to bring the trailer.
Sometimes just when someone's a fiduciary, then it involves more.
Well,
you know.
Heath,
Yeah,
we're gonna stick them.
No, that's what I mean, but sometimes I like to see the, the language, so,
Yeah, that's a bit of an odd, a little different arrangement, but,
Yeah.
I find myself complaining about the bureaucracy quite a bit. When you find a chance, you can just do a small project and just get it
And just
done with
jump on
some ease.
there.
Maybe that's a good thing.
it is, it sure is.
I think the idea of doing it collaboratively, to get the volume out there enough to make it a very low minimum cost type thing for the county, that's a good.
We still have a lot of tires in our county, and I don't know where they're all coming from. There's a lot in every spring.
Well, if people don't bring them to you, they go down our road and throw them in my
Right,
ditch, so,
right, right.
I get tired of picking up other people's tires on my
We
ditch.
still have people regularly call and say, hey, I just bought this property and there's a whole bunch of tires laying out here. Or I had in the spring, I had somebody call and say they had over a dozen TVs stacked in their garage of the home that they just bought. I'm like, how did you miss that on the walkthrough? Right, someone, you better get rid of them this spring. So, yeah, just.
Well, I guess, in view of this, I move that we approve this participation with the county support.
We have a motion and Ken supports. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. Very good.
All right.
Thank you, Kate.
Good for a while now, right? Not for real. Yeah.
And it's 2:57, we're 2 minutes behind. I'm sorry for the equalization director to come up and talk about our taxable values, Form 4046.
I made a mistake on what I submitted for the agenda. This is the corrected, there's no explanation, it's just, happy hands on the number pad.
Thank you, Bart.
Variance seemed big, so I was looking at it again, and it's like, this is just wrong. So here it is. It's much less of a change. DeWitt did uncap one parcel, and it made $2,895 addition to our taxable value from the tentative value that had been presented with county equalization in April. So this is a checked, verified, good number of $2,547,730,456 in taxable value.
Thank you. Any questions?
You can sit here, you can scan these things. Right.
Yeah, they made the error,
Yeah.
and, it was transposition, it's not anything else.
I would move that set the value, revised values.
Ann supports that. Is there any other questions on this? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you, I'm sorry to have delayed the meeting.
No, you did. You're right on time. Thank you, Bart. We'll move on to item number 6.
That's the hazard mitigation.
No,
That's,
you and that.
I did. I was teasing him yesterday at the UFC meeting, you can't come and listen to the other presentation. I was skipping it already.
I looked at the title, by the way.
That's what equalization does.
Larry's off hanging out at the beach, so you get me today.
Wow, that's good. He's at the beat.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
For the county and the municipalities of Boone County to be eligible for potential hazard mitigation grant funding following disaster, the county has to have approved hazard mitigation plan. It has to be updated every 5 years. Back in 2010, Clinton Ingham and Delta Township we're awarded grant to work on the current update. Started working with the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission on that. I'll turn it over to you and let us know about the process and plans and such.
Thank you very much. This is the region's second plan. I'm sorry, I'm Susan Tick. I'm the director of Tri-County Regional Planning Commission. The commission worked with all three counties, Delta Township and City of Lansing, back in 2008 to adopt a region-wide hazard mitigation plan. This is hazard mitigation, so it's not actually emergency response. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. This is a proactive approach to identifying what potential hazards a community may experience, and then actually explore some of the potential ways to mitigate or minimize the impacts of those hazards. And so, I don't want to diminish it in any way, but it's not nearly as important as emergency services, but it is a very good first step or pre-piece to have in place. So, the region had this. It was formally adopted and in place for 5 years, and then FEMA decided that 5 years was a good time to cut those off. So our region actually came out of compliance with having a plan in place. And Tri-County with the other counties all applied, and Delta Township applied and were granted funds to review or renew the hazard mitigation plan. We started that a little while ago, really pretty much before I started with Tri-County 4 years ago. And it was sort of on a slow track. It's an exercise for the most part, just sort of collecting information and asking people what they think the hazards might be and what they might do about them. But we have now completed that. We have, on behalf of all three counties, submitted it to Michigan State Police for their review, got a positive review, turned it around and sent it on to FEMA. They looked through it, and I have received from FEMA this week a formal, very positive review of the plan. And now, the next step, or the final step, really, in FEMA's perspective, is to place that before the three counties and the township for formal adoption. The City of Lansing went ahead and did their own, sort of under crunch circumstances a few years ago when they suffered a flash flood in South Lansing. That was 2011, early 2011. At that time, they recognized what you guys have already figured out, which was that they were not eligible for some of the emergency management funds that would have helped repair the storm sewer damage and problems in South Lansing. And so they went ahead and updated their piece of it themselves at that time. So no hard feelings, we're all in good shape at this point.
But isn't the threshold 10,000 or more, you can do your own, or you can buy in with, under the county plan, is that how that works?
Yeah, that was with the grant program. I mean, anybody can do a plan,
Right.
but if you wanted to get the grant funds to do it, that was
All
right.
It, about a year ago, a year and a half ago, we got a kind of unpleasant situation with the state police, going back and forth on the thing. Finally, it's just things ironed out in the last few months. Got resolved pretty smoothly, but I guess here it is now. Pushed on some people and finally got there. Get them to look at it under, if they have comments, to make those comments. Don't just sit there and grumble about it. Don't say no. Why? Clarify it.
And so the ending result is that each entity will adopt a resolution. And then we will be basically in compliance.
Exactly. You'll be covered again. You'll have a regional plan whenever any of the communities would like to apply for FEMA funds, especially to do proactive hazard mitigation or planning. They'll be eligible for those funds. I want to especially thank the participants of the advisory committee. Dave mentioned, over the past 4 years, Tri-County staff has worked with emergency managers and, in some cases, land use planning staff of each of the municipalities, not just the counties, but also the municipalities within the county, to talk about what hazards they were facing or would face and what they could do about them. Larry St. George from Clinton County was our key point person, and he's actually described to me already a couple of ideas that they have for some of these FEMA grants that they'd like to apply for. I'm not remembering exactly which one he was talking about a few weeks ago, but
Dallas Township.
Dallas Township, that was it. And so, the drain, yeah, and we have an experience in Potterville and Eaton County where I used to work that they could use a FEMA grant to re-landscape around the train tracks where that derailment happened a number of years ago. That would improve the sight distance and minimize the hazards or the impacts on the people that live in that near vicinity. So those are the kind of projects that will become eligible for if we have this in place.
So we want to open this up for discussion because I think there's maybe some questions on this too. When you look at the list of possibly contaminated sites like in our county, who then goes through and says, who sort of makes that determination that this is kind of the one or two or whatever? Is that basically driven by whatever funding would be available, or is that by rank of worst to last contamination, or what? How is that sort of happening?
Well, there's a pretty broad field, so I'll try to narrow it in a little bit and say, places where they are containing, storing hazardous materials or may have accumulated hazardous outputs, byproducts from a manufacturing operation, that sort of thing. Those are regulated a little bit more heavily, and the response is more immediate because the contents, the materials on site could be released more easily. And so maybe that's really the standard that I want to suggest is in play. The standard is how easily would the contamination pose a hazard to people, right?
Potential.
The potential of the hazard, right? You know, if it's buried in the ground and nobody's digging it up for any reason, it's not great. You know, it might contaminate the groundwater over time. The plume is going to move. You know, and you need to be aware of where it is in case somebody should say, "Wow, I think that looks like a good place for a swimming hole." You know, but at that point, you kind of weigh and balance the potential exposure of the hazard.
Anyone else have questions?
Actually, I had a few, and I suspect it's because this is my first time through with this sort of thing. And when I was reading, just to again get me on the right track, it stated in here that in 2005 is when each of the entities did the plan and submitted it themselves. And then it said in 2010 that it was reviewed, okay? And it also says, well, when we look in here at this 10-year time frame, and in the 10-year time frame, there was not a significant increase in population. There wasn't any significant change that occurred. And it also indicates that as we go forward, looking at the population, we don't see anything, you know, any flyers that are out there, you know, to be, that would cause us concern or to say, whoa, we better be watching that, okay? So if we go through a 10-year time frame without any review of the plan or an update to the plan, and now the proposal in here is for 5 years. Again, the reason for that, even though we aren't having significant changes, the reason for that is what?
The reason for a 5-year review is that's the federal FEMA requirement to have an effective plan. Frankly, we were without a plan for almost 5 years. We were out of compliance because we did not review, update, and renew that planning status.
And what were the negative consequences to us for that period of time, for that 5-year period?
The only negative consequences, and that's, I said, it's not huge, but you were ineligible, we were all ineligible to secure those FEMA pre-hazard or mitigation grants.
Right. So the whole purpose for all this is to be able to obtain FEMA grants?
It is not the whole purpose, and it's not
I'm-
the
I'm
only
just
purpose,
trying
but
to
it is a very
understand.
good purpose. It's a very practical purpose. It's one that resonated with the steering committee of emergency managers who would like to have a little bit of money or an opportunity for grants to proactively address these hazards that you know are going to happen. I'm not as familiar with Clinton County, but for example, in Eaton County, there are a number of areas in the southern part of the county that flood every time, that always have the power go out because of the conditions of the grid, that regularly have problems with erosion, rush over of old mining materials onto roadways. And they know that that's coming the next time it rains again, or that we have a winter storm, and they can't find the funding to put in berms or create structures that would avoid that, or to build the roadway up so that it goes over the problem. Those are the kind of grants that would become available when we have a hazard mitigation plan in place. But I want to say, actually, I'm a planner and I run a planning agency, and I firmly believe that planning is a very valuable thing. And this is a good plan because it helps us go through the exercise as a region of recognizing the potential hazards we face and identifying the modern, current solutions to those hazards. And that's a good thing to have in place for any community, is to have a plan for addressing or mitigating the impacts of the hazard. So that in itself makes for a good plan.
Okay.
I guess just to go back to the one that was brought up, Long Gallows Township, actually in the village of Fowler, that has been an issue of flooding for as long as I can remember.
Dave, is that the one that goes up by the school?
No, that one has really been pretty well resolved. This is the one that's right in front of Quality Hearing.
Oh, okay.
You know, I'd say within the last 2 years, I know I'm pretty certain once there's that much water on M21 there.
Oh.
And boy, that creates some real problems. Buildings and stuff in the area there, trucks going through there. That they have a plan to resolve it, but getting some funding to help this way would certainly ease the agony.
Sure. Do you know how much they're talking for that grant? For everything that they would need in order to resolve their issue?
No, I would speculate. I'm sure the project's in hundreds of thousands.
Correct.
Because they're going through part of the town, they're doing a lot of underground stuff. And so it's not going to be a cheap project to start. I don't know what percentage they would get out of that for that through the hazard mitigation, but I can tell you this, if they resolve that problem, they're going to have a lot of happy people, one way or the other.
Sure. And
A lot of fun, a lot of money saved by residents for various, all kinds of reasons, because they want to be.
Sure. May I continue?
Go ahead.
Okay.
You know, I wanted to mention something else that I did not explain to everybody else, too. It may be helpful to note that this didn't cost anybody anything. The funding for the project for this renewal, which might explain why it took so long, the funding came in the form of a $60,000 grant from FEMA through the Michigan State Police, which Tri-County Regional Planning Commission matched with a contribution of staff time and data research, which we already maintain as a regional center, and the staff time and participation of the emergency managers from each of the 3 counties in this advisory committee, which met at best a couple of times a year to just sort of talk through hazards. So I just wanted to mention it's a pretty inexpensive way to make us eligible.
This conversation is good for me, so I appreciate it. Again, I'm new on the board here. And I also, in a business perspective, have been a planner. So I can definitely appreciate the planning. And in doing so, and again, maybe it was my misinterpretation of the purpose as I was going through the document. And what I saw in the document was, for example, we identified, as you mentioned earlier, there are certain tank areas where there are tanks, underground tanks, that kind of thing. And it seemed to put some things out there that when I looked further in the document, I didn't see them addressed in, okay, this is the issue. And it laid it out there. It said it said that the EPA has identified contaminant cleanup in the area as a priority. The MDEQ has identified the sites that are potentially contaminated. And then there was a link in that document that took, that you could go to Clinton County. Clinton County, there were 78 locations identified as having underground storage tanks, and then there were 59 that were identified as being leaking. And of the leaking ones, we had 22 that were located in St. John's. But yet, and so that kind of threw me, as I was looking through there. But yet when I looked at the, okay, what is the plan where we're going to address that, I really didn't see anything there. So there was a concern for me that if the federal EPA is saying, hey, there's an issue here, and if MDEQ says this is a priority for us, now you've got two outside organizations that are saying, hey, this is major for us, and then we don't address it, that was a concern for me.
So, in a bigger picture of things, this is just one slice of the picture. And this is the identifying hazardous situation, and it's not resolving or addressing the hazards. We could be a couple of points. Leaking underground storage tanks are not necessarily leaking. That's important to take note of. They're calculated to be possibly leaking based on the age at which they can estimate that they were put into the ground. There's a lot of us that are too old to be doing some stuff that we do, and we can still do it just fine. So, on one hand, I want to assure you that we don't have a huge pool of contamination floating underneath the city of St. John's because there are so many old storage tanks underground. A number of them are not leaking. But that said, this plan identifies that as one of the many hazards. This is an overview of all different kinds of hazards. And it makes sure that we recognize that we do have that kind of a hazard here. You won't see much about hurricanes here because we don't have that hazard, but some plans talk about those. We have tornadoes, so that gets mentioned. We have potential environmental contamination from leaking underground storage tanks, so that gets mentioned. It doesn't get addressed. This is not a plan to address it, it's a plan that identifies potential hazards. And then recommends or suggests where the mitigation activities could occur or come from. In this case, leaking underground storage tanks, the federal government has identified some not just potentially hazardous sites, but actually seriously hazardous sites, like the one in Lansing Township that's mentioned in this plan, the metal treating plating place in Lansing Township that burnt down a few years ago, and emergency services washed it all down, right into the drain, and everything was in big trouble. That's the kind of hazard that EPA comes in and actually does a brownfield reclamation or redevelopment plan on identifying and controlling contamination. And the same thing is actually happening through the Brownfield Authority here in the county. And I can happily announce that the region has just received an award of $400,000. It's not through my office, but another group of a regional Brownfield Authority had joined forces with all the Brownfield authorities.
Is this the lead thing? And wasn't that
Lead
500?
Yeah, you're right. It
started out at
larger.
6,
Yeah,
ended up at 5.
It's 500,000, and that will offer funding to assess those sites and determine exactly how contaminated they are. We're back to the same thing that I talked about before, the brownfield redevelopment is sort of in my background of one of my past lives was doing brownfield redevelopment for Ingham County. And in this particular case, there will be funding to be able to assess those sites, but the funding doesn't really take effect or kick in until somebody's sure that they want to do something with the site, then they're going to dig it up and find out if that tank is contaminated or anything or not, and remove it and remove the soils. And that LEAP grant will help pay for that.
And I guess maybe maybe it's my understanding of what would be, and again, I come from a different environment, I come from business rather than, the governmental. So, but what I expected to see and didn't see in here was, for example, with the airport, and again, it's in my mind what hazard mitigation means. The airport, and across from the airport, you have the anthrax production facility, and then you've got, what, the armory or something that's just right by there. So in my mind, I would have expected to see some kind of comment or something, having to even do with the fact that we have a potential risk if something were to come. I mean,
Is that in the city though?
It's in Clinton County.
I think that
It's been in.
But you said part of the city.
The Amtrak places.
Pardon?
Ingham. Yeah,
It's up on the end.
it's south of Sharon. The Amtrak.
Yeah.
Lab, that's the name.
Okay.
City
My-
limits.
Yeah. My point is that in the lands, is that separate? Because
That is
they're
Well,
all.
we don't know. I mean, I don't know by looking at this.
Bioport
package.
is in
I
the
don't
city
know.
of Lansing.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Bioport, that's the,
So it's
okay,
in-
is in the city of Lansing. And so, I actually have not looked at the city of Lansing's plan, so I don't know if it's listed specifically. There was actually in this plan no attempt to detail out a list of all potential hazardous industrial or commercial sites. That was not part of the intent. It was really a much broader scope view of what are potential hazards. That falls under the category of generally technological hazards. And
So as I,
was Spartan
Yeah.
or GM or,
yeah, and again, I guess that's my understanding of what hazard mitigation would be.
I can say too that we learned a lot, or I learned a lot in the past few months, taking on the wrap-up of this. The content and the outline for this are very, very rigorously defined by Federal Emergency Management Agency, by FEMA, very rigorously aligned. To the point, as Dave mentioned, where we thought we had a pretty good general survey of the hazards in the region, and the Michigan State Police person that was working with us took one look at it and said, it's like a quarter of what you're going to have to do. Here's the latest outline from FEMA of all of the topics that you have to touch and people that you have to ask. So,
One more point real quick. When I look at the different items that were on there for Clinton County and the frequency of incidents, that sort of thing, compared to the other two counties, Clinton County was really, really, really good.
yeah, it's a very safe, nice place.
It is. It is.
Absolutely.
Clinton County is awesome with regard to what is the risk, And when I look at Eaton, it was pretty comparable. However, when I look at Ingham, whole different ballgame, okay? So as a person from Clinton County and commissioner, I am concerned that by putting the three counties together, that potentially it doesn't have some potential to negatively impact Clinton County, okay? Because when we look by ourselves alone, I mean, seriously, we look really good comparatively. And especially when we come together with like the EPA and the NDAQ, and I just don't know who's going to see it and how they're going to interpret it. And my concern is that it can be interpreted to a disadvantage to us rather than it being an advantage to us.
I represent a regional agency, and I've worked in all 3 counties in this region in the 30 years I've lived in Michigan, but I am very committed to a regional perspective. And I have to say that I think that participating with we don't live alone. And while Clinton County may be able to draw its borders on a map, you do not shut them down and fail to interact with the other 2 counties and the city of Lansing. We are all part of the same community. And to submit a plan or a diagram or a document of any kind, I think that limits the county's perspective to its own boundaries, I think that would be a loss for the county. I think that you come off looking, quote, better from a hazards perspective when you look at the entire region. If you just look at Clinton County, you might not look quite as well. But that's really from the perception of the community and whether or not hazard is a factor in people that want to live here or people that want to stay living here or people that want to invest in here. Frankly, the people that look at the hazard mitigation plan are those people at FEMA that are concerned about overall pre-planning to prevent large disaster as much as they can, I suppose. The Michigan State Police look at this and they determine that there are places where they have to have, I don't know, in the end, heavier equipment on the right here. And that won't be in Clinton County because they can see that that's not the largest technological hazard or human hazard. I don't really think that this would reflect poorly on the county in any way by participating in a 3-county way. And I do know that at the federal level, Clinton County, Eaton County, and Ingham County are designated metropolitan statistical area. The 3-county region is designated by the state of Michigan as a prosperity district. The federal U.S. Department of Commerce designates Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham County as an economic development district. The whole world outside of us sees this region as a 3-county boundary. They don't look at us as 3 separate counties, or even the difference between Bath and
in most cases, I totally agree with how there are the prosperity regions and the tri-county. I totally get that. And I was surprised that Delta Township that was in there and called out, which that threw me because I never see Delta Township. And what I do see is Lansing and East Lansing. So it really threw me there too, and yet Lansing opted out. So I was confused by that.
So Lansing didn't really opt out. As I explained, they did theirs earlier.
It says in here that...
Well, they opted out of doing this one because they had just done one. Okay.
They did that for a reason.
They did that for a reason.
Okay.
And
All right.
they did theirs sooner for a reason.
Okay.
And Delta Township joined in the first round and took advantage of doing this in the second round, not because of the size of the township, not because of the township board at all, but frankly because of the quality, the high caliber of the equipment and training that their emergency services department offers. And as you know, Delta Township serves more than Delta Township because they do have the highest level of emergency management or emergency services provision at that level. They have the sheriff's department right in Delta Township, opposed. They have their equipment, the training, and that was actually in the first round of FEMA planning, hazard planning. That was a criteria that they were looking at. So Delta Township came in at that time to participate because of I'm not too good on this, you guys might know, how they grade the level of emergency service operation.
Want to, Ann, did you get some questions answered?
I did get quite a few questions answered. Thank you.
Good. Just in the essence of time, if there's anything else you may even want to talk to Dave on, because a lot of
At least point through, at the very least pointed.
at least points right back through there. We need to adopt the plan and approve the resolution. And I would say especially, we need to do both in adopting the resolution, then we have a, for instance, right in Fowler, of something that could be useful. It would be useful right off the bat on something like this within the county. which is a good thing, at the very least, not to mention all the other ramifications of that.
I move for approval of the plan and also approval of the resolution.
Yes, we do together.
I'll support.
And support. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same?
No.
Please, no one, no. Any? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are moving on to parking policy. Number 7.
Fun stuff here, eh?
This is fun stuff. Yep.
As you recall, the board authorized the lease across the street a couple of months back. They have the first course down over there. They've encountered some water, bad spots in the pavement. They're waiting for things to dry out. So I guess when that happens, we'll probably be able to use it. We have not paved them, but to that end, we thought it best to update the parking policy. This is something that's posted on the county employee intranet, something that's reviewed with all of our new employees. And specifically here, we're talking about assigned spaces over at the Methodist Church. There's only 20 for our sake, in order when there is allowances for them to use the lot exclusively during funerals and those types of events. We need to notify people that it's not available for employee parking. If we limit that to some assigned departments, that will work to our advantage. I think it will also give them some comfort in the long term. There'll be some familiarity with the vehicles that are there. We're going to assign a couple, 3 departments to park there. It'll be the same cars pretty much every day rather than random cars pulling in and out of there. Sort of that end, otherwise it's pretty straightforward. Just a good document to communicate with the employees, appropriate places to put their cars, to maintain the central lot here as open as we can for the public.
I'll make a motion to approve the parking policy procedures for the courthouse complex.
Support.
We have most support, and Ryan, I would suppose that anything as far as the church goes over there will just be handled on whatever happens. If they have a funeral or something.
They're going to let us know that's in the
Just
agreement.
that's
We'll
it.
send an email, they'll send us an email, we'll communicate. It's probably going to be in my office, the county, and maybe one of the offices downstairs. We're going to have 24 people. There's always absences for vacation, whatever. But we want to keep it as full as we can, but it'd be nice if the same cars are on a pretty consistent basis, and they know it's not being used.
Easier handled then.
We're going to give them some type of little placard they can lay in their bag, so at least the folks at the church are familiar. This is someone from the county that's going to be there. I don't know if we should be allowed that it's necessary, but they're gracious enough to let us use it. We want to be good neighbors.
Anything else? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Moving on to FOIA. Is there any burning desire to go through page by page? Any questions? Would you want to relate any changes?
There are some changes. I mean, substantively, it's the same. However, the charges, the calculation sheets, some of the waivers have changed to get to be a bit more specific by the rules for denial. To be terribly candid, I'm not as familiar with some of the changes as I would like to be. We received that middle of last week. As I noted, we're planning to get the attorney that drafted that here for a sit-down review with some of the key departments, sheriff, 911, the clerk's office, my office. But as a practical matter, when people walk through the door, I told them, give them the information. If there's not any questions, just make it as easy as you can. We don't need to hide. 90% of what people are asking for is already available on the website. If they would research that, they could probably find it. But nonetheless, there are some nuances we need to address. I wasn't aware that we had a major problem with people getting information, but I guess they thought they needed to beef up the point.
Well, I think originally it was
The state
Yeah,
changed.
the state, the legislature, they wrote the statute.
Change, yes.
It just precipitated all these changes. I would note, it's a boilerplate policy. They wrote that for every municipality that they represent. We got a flat fee to get that done, so we didn't make specifically to have one customized for Clinton County. It's got a plug-and-play policy that meets the requirements of the statute. And we're going to try to host a discussion with people that work with it the most, particularly folks in my office. My name's on as the FOIA coordinator, and I thought real hard about trying to change that. So you don't have nothing said, but most offices can handle it pretty streamlined because they're sure using those to my attention. If you receive things, we die every day, make sure it's all on schedule, that kind of stuff. But
Well, it's actually a very important issue that needs to be addressed because there's certain things that need to be handled in a very legalistic manner.
Right.
And this is absolutely one of them. And Dave, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know that you attended that FOIA, did you attend that FOIA breakout session, that last MAC conference?
Yeah, the MAC conference.
And at the time, you said that there was a little changes.
Yeah, there was enough changes coming through on that, and I don't remember what they all were even, but there was enough changes coming through that necessitated doing an update.
yeah, well, rather than try to modify our existing policy, it was much less expensive just to
To get everything incorporated in the new one.
Yeah.
Yes.
just several.
Any burning questions? Yes.
My understanding is that part of this was because of the whole Hillary Clinton thing, and therefore, and I heard this from the DeWitt Township as they were having the discussion, and what the whomever wants to obtain information can now go to some of your personal, like your cell phone, and that sort of thing, if you receive some of the emails via cell phone. So when you have your conversation with them, if you can see if there's anything that needs to be brought here that we need to be aware of.
Okay.
I think whenever you're using any device for county business, your subset of one, that's a basic rule.
The key to it that came out of the discussion was that if you have an email in your personal computer at home involving some part of business here, and that becomes a subject of FOIA through the county, and you delete it prior to, in there, at that point, you're liable. If you deleted that a month ago, long before it even showed up, you're not required to keep those on an ongoing basis. But if one is solicited, you better not, the timing better be very clear that you did it long before it was, it wasn't in response.
Exactly, yes.
So, okay.
That was really kind of a key
The
part of
device
that
isn't like
discussion.
the issue, it's just conducting business.
Right. On any device, or any,
I don't know if that's what changed, at least.
well, that may be other things, but that was one you kind of really drilled in.
I don't mean to get on my soapbox on this, but for some small local governments, I have absolutely no problem with people FOIAing requests for information that would be very germane to what their argument is. But I've seen it, we've all seen it, where they come in, they want everything. And that is really difficult for some small local municipalities that don't have, a whole staff that can handle this. Not that it doesn't take you any different time, but at least we sort of have the resources where some of them don't. That's my only small problem. I think there should be limitations, possible limitations that restrict it a little bit.
The vast majority of people are fine.
Yes, yep, the vast majority are. Sure.
You help them out, they go with their hand.
I would look for a motion on the FOIA policy.
I'll support.
So motion, support, any other questions, comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All same, motion carries. We will move on to fire service discussion, and I know that there has been, there sort of hasn't been any changes, but there's been some discussion about looking at different options of fire coverage throughout the county. And I know that Bruce wanted to bring this discussion to the finance and personnel meeting, and so Bruce, the floor is yours, and you can...
Actually, I'm just kind of looking for an opinion from the commissioners.
Sure.
Do we want to become involved in any type of either facilitating any discussion to work with the departments as far as possibly forming an authority? Do we want, Brian and I went through all kinds of different scenarios on this. We had no interest, and they need to work out some possible issues that they might have, basically to help cut costs. Do we want to look into a county-ran village-based department? I don't necessarily need any answers right now. I don't know where our place is. We're not involved in the fire service. That's in the, I guess, the villages, townships, contract to a certain place. The county has had no involvement in the past. I was approached by a local fire chief that has interest in trying to form an authority of some sort to help cut costs, to help share people.
One of the things that was done in Kent County, and I'm not sure which department did it, but they did a lot of purchasing through a central point, the fire departments in the county, and they actually save some pretty good money. These small departments around the county, they go out to buy a truck, they might do one every 10 years. Technology, everything changes so fast, and whereas a central person in the county that was kind of cognizant of those changes, stayed abreast of that stuff. And so if they came in, he was able to narrow down what they really need instead of being sold a whole lot more than they needed. And that was helpful, but that was kind of the extent of that big county coordination, because you had, communities like Grand Rapids, and you get small townships out there.
Right. Not even equal.
And so that's an area that could be helpful. Again, you of course got to have support from pretty much all the fire departments and the municipalities to go forward with something like this. And I'm not so certain, when I was on township board, we discussed that, countywide, because I don't know, did it through the supervisors or something, but, we were operating at that time in the township fire department for less than $50,000 a year. And, you can go to some big ones and, you put another zero on and you were still not there. And so that created quite a discrepancy in levels of service and everything. As of now, DeWitt has the contract, I know they have with Riley, I believe they have about, it's a city of DeWitt. And they're actually building a building out in Riley Township right now. They're probably about ready to put a vehicle in there and have some people on call. As something to explore, it would be up to them, in my mind, encourage them to look at what they might want to do jointly. Maybe, we could provide some, service that way, but I sure don't want to put pressure. I'd be real edgy about that part, because they're all over the board on it. And as she mentioned, Delta Township providing fire service for Watertown and Eagle. They're contracted to provide full fire service. So, how that would be played into it.
Andy, you had a comment?
I would just be concerned, and my understanding of authorities is that there is the potential for funds to go to the group, and then they're not held accountable to the people, like to the people of the county. And I really don't care to get into that kind of a situation. I'm not real fond of authorities in that regard, but I certainly encourage different groups to work together. I just don't think the establishment of an authority is the way to do it.
Well, I'm a commissioner on the authority, so I've got a little experience with this and everything like that. But that was something that was worked out between townships, and I think that looking for county intervention or anything like that wasn't necessarily needed. That was issues that, financial and everything like that were worked out, with the local governments and everything like that. So, I'm more in favor of staying out of it, and the locals can go ahead and figure out their own situation. They know their situation best.
Bruce, does that help? Is it something that you...
That gives me an answer that I could pass back to them, is that we're really not interested in getting involved. And I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I just wanted you guys' opinion before I
Sure.
started pushing anything here.
Or not, yeah, exactly. Years ago, there was a meeting of all of the fire departments in the county. It was down, I can't remember exactly where it was a long time ago, Dave, I don't know if you were there. And the one good thing I remember about that meeting is there was some decisions made, nothing formal, but there was some decisions made on futures and agreements, or at least plans for agreements for different departments within the county. And you might relate back to this chief rate. Do you remember that?
Yeah, they did their backup plans or
Yep.
support plans,
And they went through all that.
Mutual aid,
Sorry?
mutual aid plan.
Yeah,
Mutual aid
yeah.
plans, and there was also, I remember discussion at the time about purchasing and so on, and it may be something that this chief may want to pursue, don't they have I believe they still have a chiefs association or
Yes,
something?
yeah.
Something that he may want to look at.
I was just curious.
Yep.
Couldn't give them a straight answer without checking with you guys.
Sure.
Yes, but it's, the Chiefs Association, chiefs can make their own decisions and stuff like that, but it's the local governments that are going to have to foot the bills and stuff like that. And so, speaking from our experience, there's a lot of duplication of services. Buying, an $800,000 vehicle or $1 million truck, that just sits there, and your neighbor next door to you does the same thing, isn't a good use of funds. But when you can go ahead and you can work out, an agreement, well then, this year I bought this because, we have mutual aid agreements, where I can go ahead and use, that truck, and vice versa. So but that's a local type of thing.
It's a local issue.
Okay.
Bruce, did you have any, you didn't really,
I don't really have a feeling one way or another.
Okay.
I just wanted to get everybody's
bring
opinion.
it to
before
the
I-
table?
Yeah.
Good. All right, good.
That's
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. Planning update, we have, obviously, Adam isn't here, and I know that, Ryan, did you have any comments, or, well, let's do it this way. Does anyone have any questions on what came from the planning commission this last month? We don't necessarily have to go through them unless someone has a question. All right, then we're going to breeze right on through. That'll come to the board meeting and our July committee meeting calendar.
I'll move for approval.
Support?
Any problem?
Dave moves, Bruce supports, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carries. And accounts payable,
I motion to approve the pay payables for the period of May 9th through June 3rd.
Support.
okay, motion by Ian, support by Ken. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries. We're on to commissioners' comments. Bruce?
Yes, I did have something. Honey, did you make copies for everybody on that? Okay. This is just a kind of a breakdown update from the Economic Alliance, what she's been doing, working on. She kind of went over it this morning, so four of us, you were there. I was going to say, I was bringing this anyway, and then she decided to go over it there too, so.
Okay.
Good.
Dave?
A couple of things, one of them on Tri-County. Last night, we got into discussion to get on the BRT thing. You know, it's, one of the commissioners from Meridian down to keeps dogging it in strange ways, but I think I'm about ready to put him on the spot and say, are you putting a motion on the table to reverse our position on that? But there's what they call CMAQ funds. It's congestion mitigation air quality. A number of years back, actually, Lansing went out of compliance, the Lansing area, the region, in air quality. And there's a certain criteria that when there's so much ozone and temperature and a bunch of conditions, set that off 2 days in a row. And it hasn't happened since, though we've had single days since then. But, so we're still in a position that's out of compliance, which, good, bad, or indifferent, it makes us eligible for this CMAQ funding. And what it can be used for is activities which would improve air quality, reduce pollution. That's basically what it comes down to. Transit is a big, that is eligible for that money. This is federal money. And if you put in alternate transportation, I must say like bike travel or something like this, you probably could get some. There's carpooling activities done by CATA. Some of that, I believe, actually gets some CMAQ money. But anyway, the discussion here right now is over the use of some of this towards that bus rapid transit thing. It is highly eligible. The question has come up, what about other activities in the region? Does it diminish those? And we've been dealing with the technical committee. They want to do these other projects and they want to use some of that money. And finally, we had to make the position clear that the commission has approved the proposal to go forward with the BRT. Therefore, the necessary funding from CMAQ money over a 3-year period here, that to make the 2 million, they actually get about 1.7, 1.8 a year anyway. And so it would be a total of 2 million over the 3-year period. And we had to make the position clear that that is where the commission, policy-wise, wanted to go. Now, and I talked to Dan at the road commission this morning about it, and I says, that leaves a significant amount of money for your other projects, yeah, over a 3-year period. But keep in mind, this is a 3-year window. Actually, CATA has deferred some events in the past, trying to, shall I say, build points or something like this. And now they're kind of calling in their chips on this one. So it got into quite a little discussion, and hopefully we can get through this and get back to a normal after 3 years. They're actually anticipating this thing being up and operating in 2018. And that's why it really got kind of dicey, because the acceleration of this here, whoa, this has got to be done kind of quick. And they had a pretty good demonstration of the plan last night of how this is going to work. And the modeling they've done is pretty impressive. I mean, they used some consultants, I don't know where they were from, but to actually model the whole route. And they had a couple of alternatives. They went back, revised them, and just from looking at the remodeling and using traffic counts, traffic data current, in that, it looks like probably a pretty good workable thing. And when you consider the proposed development for the old golf course there on Michigan Avenue, and then right across the road, there's some big proposed projects in some of the Frander area. This would fit really well with some of that. It really provide a good service to people up and down that corridor. But, and, you know, it's not a new thing. It's been used in places like San Antonio, and Adam mentioned that in Louisiana, in New Orleans, there was a system. Grant, he said, Adam's comment was at that time, he says, are we big enough yet? Well, if this goes in, it will grow. So that one was kind of dicey last night, but we got through it. The other thing, the rail trail thing, I keep hearing these comments about horses on you. And man, there's people getting irate about it. I can't remember who was it, Mike said something. Just pretty frustrating because, you know, you take a bite through it. He says, this isn't, it's not like it's just one spot here. He says they're wandering the whole trail. But every time they do, you know, their foot turns, takes up. So this afternoon, and probably in a few minutes, I'll go back down there. See what's going on.
The only thing I've got is for City of East Lansing, we had talked economic development before. It looks like another option, another facility is going to be put before the Planning Commission at their East Lansing's next planning committee. And it will be just north of the Hawknest subdivision, just south of the Eagle Eye. So it would be a state road between Chandler and Coolidge. And that will be a 134-unit facility. It appears to be like from what I gather, and I'll give you a better update later. And I heard off the record that it would be more like senior housing, that sort of thing. And just hold on that one though. But definitely it's 134 units that they're proposing to build. Yep.
Ken?
A couple of things on the health department. I think we're 99% sure that we have a new doctor for the health department. So that's a good thing. We'll have some information in the next company. The auditors come in, I guess, is what you call them, for national accreditation, and they've been going through, and so that took place this week, so there was a lot of questions and things like that, so I seem to think that went well, we'll find out in the future. It's kind of...
Hopefully all our doctors are doctors.
Well, it's for accreditation, it's policies and procedures, so it's not necessarily rules. You know, you're saying, like, the temperature of this is going to be a certain thing. It's how you handle situations and how you do things that make things more consistent. So, not every place is accredited, not every place is national accredited, and some places have no accreditation. Some states don't require it at all. But it's a way to go ahead and have your operation, running streamlined and more efficient.
The only thing I have is this morning at the economic meeting out at Liquid Ag, Jamie Clover Adams. I can sit and listen to her all day. She is such a breath of fresh air, and she just absolutely is someone from the state that I love to hear talking. And normally, I'll be honest, I don't, because there's usually a lot of clutter in between, and she just does it. She cuts to the bottom line. And when you see what she has done since she has been there, what a testament to. One thing I noticed was that she said she had cut 400 regulations at MDARD, and a lot of them were outdated things, but she has them off the books, and she said, actually she said almost 400, and it was 383 is what the number was, and she said, that's a lot when we only have 400 employees. And I thought, well, at least one per employee. We got rid of one regulation per employee that someone doesn't look up online and say, I don't want to go there because this is still, even though it's really not forced though. So I just give her credit for what she's doing there, and she's doing just a fabulous job. And it was really, really good this morning. And that's the other thing. I just real quickly, the other thing I mentioned to you folks. Bob Sheehan at Community Mental Health is taking a new job with the association, and I spend a lot of time down Jolly Road these days, like it seems every other day with the search committee. And we had, actually, the search posting ends tomorrow. So far, we've had 87 applicants. And we had, out of that, about 30 qualified that actually met every criteria just in the posting. And so we've got it down to that, and we've got to crunch this, obviously get this down. His last day will be October 1st, and I really wanted to get someone in there at least a month ahead of time if we could, to shadow him. It's such a huge organism that's going 24/7 that someone needs to be there for a little bit, even if they're familiar with mental health. They need to be there just for all the little innuendos that happen constantly. So we're going forward, we're going to get it done, and have good committee working. With that,
I just wanted to add, we did get a commitment from a guy at Tri-County for the transportation plan.
oh, good.
He came out of Kent County and he's going to have his metro region. And he's actually taking a cut, figure this out, but I think he's bumped the ceiling in there. He has nowhere to go in that place, and he's taking a substantial cut in the wage. He wants to get back this way for whatever reasons, I don't know, but, and he seemed like, and he has real good recommendations out of him, and they have to work with him, and they have worked with him. He seemed very clear, concise in their interview. So,
I hope we actually don't want to, because we've got to get things narrowed down. Thank you all. Any other business at all? Anyone? If not, we're adjourned, and we are going to go into
At 4 o'clock.
at 4 o'clock, and we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. Personnel should actually be pretty short. I think we can get through that pretty quickly, but we'll come back in about 5 minutes. Yeah, you try it today, buddy. Cut him off.